I've worked here at Lawrence High as a teacher. This is my third year. And before that, I worked at Lawrence High for almost 4 years as a para. I worked in the autism classroom and I loved it. And before that, I did freelance theater, like just kind of my whole life. So I've been doing, gosh, when did I mean, professionally I started doing this as soon as I was out of college, which was in like 2000 or so. And then I did plays as a kid from the time I was really small. My first role was in 4th grade. I was in a community theater production in my hometown in Salina, Kansas. It was a play called Wait Until Dark, but I was like the only little kid in it, and I will never forget. It's like what sparked my interest and kind of changed my life. The week of production is, it's hard to like switch modes from teaching in the classroom to working on the show, because it's kind of like when I work, it's like a balance, right? So if there's no show, teaching is the priority, right? Everything I do in my classes is the priority. As the show gets closer and closer, it evens out where I'm trying to do both until the play takes a little bit of a priority. So sometimes I'll find myself in front of the classroom and I'm like, okay, I gotta be back in teacher mode instead of director mode or errand running mode, because we do so much of this stuff for the shows on our own. So I'm like thinking about props, I'm thinking about printing the program, I'm thinking about someone in the cast who's sick, and there's just like a million things to think about. So on a scale of 1 to madness, it's a struggle. I think some teachers wouldn't maybe say this, but it's difficult. Like, it's really hard, and it's hard to feel like a human sometimes. You have all these different modes, like teacher and partner and director and just individual, and something's got to give. You can't do everything. But I feel really lucky. I have a lot of good support systems in my life, and I feel like even my students understand when it's the week of the show. They're kind of like, all right, it's we'll abide. But yeah, and I think that taking care of yourself is often the most neglected part of that. But if you don't take care of yourself, I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but if you don't take care of yourself, you really can't be there for anybody else. So if I'm exhausted, if I haven't been eating well, just kind of been eating on the go or not eating enough or not sleeping, I'm an atrocious beast the next day. I'm like anybody else. I'm like stressed and everything. So I try to keep it, at least if I feel stressed, I try not to like maybe show it, because I always want to try to, I'm sure I fail sometimes, but I want to try to model like handling stress in a way that you don't, you're not grouchy with other people or taking it out on them. So that's important to me too, because I feel like everybody's watching everything you do, especially young people. So I don't ever want to set that example, that you get to be a jerk. What inspired me to get into theater? Seeing it as a kid, like being able to go to like children's theater performances when I was small, like in grade school. I think most people have gotten to see a play, or they have people come through and travel and do a performance. And I remember seeing a version of The Three Little Pigs, and I was young. It was probably 2nd grade maybe. And I remember seeing it and getting done, and then the cast lined up outside the theater, and you could shake their hands, and meet them like they kind of do sometimes. And I will never forget, there were the 3 pigs, the people who were playing the pigs, and they had their little like pig suits on, but they took their hats off. And I remember shaking their hands and just being like starstruck. I mean, these were like community theater actors who were playing pigs and the 3 little pigs. But I was like, wow, they're people like me, but they can go on stage and be somebody else. That always intrigued me. I was the only child growing up. I mean, I still am, but I always was intrigued about the lives of other people, because my family was very small. So I always was very curious about how other families lived and how other people lived. So I think that opportunity to be somebody else or to step in someone else's shoes was what in theater appealed to me, and then what also just appeals to me in life. Like, I think it makes me a better teacher because I have an easier time empathizing, maybe, because I can put myself in someone else's shoes. Let's see, the biggest obstacle. I guess the biggest obstacle we face here is very frequently time and the involvement of our students. Like, we just have students who are super involved in everything: choir, band, art club, Young Feminist Club, orchestra, everything. And it's all really time consuming. So to work around those schedules, I think, is the hardest. And to try to be fair with everyone, to try to give like the other teachers what they need, but we have to sometimes say we have to be the priority right now because we're moving into that time. So I think time is number one. Probably number two is money. I mean, there's never, it's just, life. There's just never quite enough money to do what I wish we could do. And I wish our auditorium was updated a little bit more so that we had better lighting and better systems. It's all pretty old. But at the same time, I think that doesn't really matter because to me it's not, I don't know. It's not about like, was the set perfect? Were all the props perfect? Was everything perfect? It's more about, educational theater is the experience. It's learning from it. So even learning to work in a space that's older, learning how to do the best you can with what you have, I think that's a good example too, because you're not always going to have an ideal situation. So you have to just jump in, do the best you can.